They believed letting you go would be of no consequence, that you might recede like a tide, heal in the shadows, and return the moment you are summoned. But what if your silence isn't a reaction, but a quiet return to your own unshakable center? Many feel that to withdraw is to admit defeat. Yet, from a space of deep awareness, stillness is a form of profound strength. It is not a retreat into hiding, but an evolution into being. When you embrace it with clarity, it does not simply cause them to reconsider your absence. It invites them to witness the gentle collapse of their own assumptions. You are on the verge of understanding why your stillness, when rooted in clarity and peace, becomes the most powerful expression of all. The very ones who dismissed you without a second thought will be the ones to quietly contend with the fact that your spirit is no longer available for their disturbance. And if you are weary of the endless cycle of waiting, explaining, or seeking to be seen, then your journey inward has already begun. Connect with this space, for here we learn to transform challenge into resilience, stillness into clarity, and heartbreak into your most grounded self. If you were once set aside as if you were insignificant, remain here for a moment. What you are about to explore will shift how you exist in their memory, and more importantly, in your own reality. The end of a connection often arrives without ceremony. At times, everything dissolves into a stark quiet. No conflict, no outward turmoil, no final exchange. They simply drift away. And the most challenging part, you remain attempting to find meaning in the emptiness, while they seem to continue their path as if yours never crossed it. This is when the familiar guidance appears, create distance, sever ties, become unseen. Let silence be your only response, with the hope that perhaps the stillness will speak for you. Yet, as time flows on, the expected ripples do not appear. This can feel like a new kind of sorrow. When you withdraw hoping to be missed, and instead meet with indifference, your silence can feel like it only echoes within you, a hollow space that does not mend. You step back, and their life continues undisturbed. You become quiet, and nothing in their world seems to change. What is often overlooked is that mere absence has lost its profound resonance. Our world is filled with those who disappear, block, and then reappear. This has become a predictable cycle, and what is expected no longer carries weight, no longer moves the heart, no longer holds deep meaning. If silence was once a source of powerful emotional communication, its edge has softened. It is now an anticipated part of the dance, especially for those who once let you go. They may already foresee your next movement. They recognize the rhythm. They are emotionally prepared. The void of your absence does not feel the same. This is why a simple withdrawal is often not enough. True inner detachment must flow from a place much deeper than just ceasing contact. The aim is not to vanish from their life, but to withdraw from their emotional narrative. It is not about a physical removal. It is about becoming centered in your own being, undisturbed. Have you ever sensed this shift in someone? You may see them, but their entire energy field feels different. The way they express themselves, the calm behind their words, the absence of seeking. A person once so readily available is now anchored in a quiet strength, and that is what is felt so deeply. Here, the first seeds of questioning are sown in the mind of the one who let you go. Not because you have vanished, but because you have remained transformed. You are not broadcasting pain or loss. You are embodying a peaceful neutrality, a calm that neither pursues nor pushes away, that offers no explanation. This quiet presence carries more weight because you are still here, but your life force is no longer directed toward them. You exist, you move, you breathe, but the current of your life now flows in a new direction. You've become a reflection they no longer recognize, an echo that has found its own source. This unsettles their sense of knowing, and your presence changes its nature. It is no longer an offering, it becomes a gentle reminder, a quiet reminder that you exist, but you no longer belong to their story, not in spirit, not in energy. That lack of a clear emotional hook creates their unease. When you vanish, they create stories to soothe themselves. They are hurting. But when you remain calm, quiet, and inwardly centered. There is no story for them to hold. You have not departed, yet you are already free. You are there, but your peace is untouchable. That very paradox is what begins to dissolve their certainty. The real transformation begins not when you disappear, but when you evolve. When you cease to participate in the old dance. When you shift in stillness, not to affect them, but to protect your own tranquility. When you no longer give your energy away. When you stop reacting and simply continue your journey with grace. So if you believed silence alone would be enough, you may have been following a map of the surface. The genuine shift happens within. It is not about leaving a space. It is about becoming an untouchable space. Even if they can see you, they cannot reach the essence of what you are becoming. This kind of inner peace leaves no visible trace of conflict, but it gently dissolves illusions. Nothing is more perplexing than a person who is physically present, but spiritually independent. It leads them to face something they did not anticipate. You are no longer trying to bridge the gap, and they can sense that deeply. If this perspective resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe. Here, each week, we explore new paths of stillness, grounded presence, and the art of rebuilding your inner home. For those who are ready to stop seeking warmth from places that offer none. There comes a point where you see that your withdrawal no longer unsettles them, that they have adjusted to life without your presence. It is no longer startling, no longer disquieting. It has become a predictable part of a pattern they anticipated long before you took your first step back. To be absent once meant something. There was a time your absence would leave a noticeable silence. Now, it can feel like faint background noise, because the person who took you for granted has adapted. They have learned your rhythms. They know the quiet moments eventually come. They have built a shelter for it. They even expect it. They will grow quiet soon. They may think, they always do. They will return when things settle. That mindset renders your absence harmless, predictable, and easy to dismiss. You have been rehearsed in their mind so many times. There is no longer a sense of surprise. When someone prepares for your absence in this way, they do not feel the loss of you. They feel no great disturbance, because, at a deep level, they never truly believed your stillness signified a permanent shift. They have learned to sit through your storms without getting wet. That is the nature of emotional preparation. So when you pull back expecting to create a significant shift, what you may find is stillness, a cold, quiet stillness. Not necessarily because they are without care, but because they are no longer surprised. You have become a line in their script, a dramatic pause before your expected return. That is when the realization dawns that form of silence no longer works, not as it once did, because it is no longer a statement of truth. It is a low hum, expected, managed and categorized as a temporary state. Your emotional retreat has lost its gentle sting, and the more it is repeated, the more secure they may feel. It is a profound realization that what once made them pause, now barely causes them to blink. And this is not because they are stronger, but because your pattern has become emotionally predictable. You provided the map, the blueprint, and they have learned how to navigate it without losing their footing. That is the turning point. That is when your own energy must shift, because silence alone is not the answer. Withdrawal without inner transformation is invisible. You cease to be a mystery. You cease to be truly missed, not because you are unworthy, but because you are engaging in the same dance. When you withdraw only to be seen, they can sense the intention. When you go silent while holding the hope of being pursued, they can feel the pull. And they do not move, because they know that as long as you are waiting for them to see you, you are still emotionally tethered, still offering your energy. But something changes, something truly shifts, when you stop stepping away and start walking forward, when you stop using stillness as a tool and instead allow it to be a reflection of your own growth. You do not hide, you progress. You do not seek to wound, you evolve. That is where the deep resonance is felt. They anticipate your silence to mean, please see me, but they never expect it to mean, My peace no longer includes you. And it is in that shift from waiting to walking that your absence finally becomes real. Not with noise, not with anger, just solid, quiet, and unreachable in a way they cannot define. That is the part they were not prepared for, because they were ready for your tears. They were ready for your confusion. They were ready for your disappearance, followed by a gentle return. But they were not ready for your calm. They were not ready for your peace, for the version of you that walks without looking back. That version of you, the one that doesn't react, doesn't explain, doesn't grasp for attention. That version is what dissolves the illusion they held. That version is what rewrites the story. Because now they are the ones left watching in silence, uncertain how to find their way back to you. And with a beautiful irony, it is not the volume of your silence that creates the resonance. It is the clarity of your presence in your own life. It is the way you fill your days without seeking their approval. It is the truth that your energy no longer pursues, no longer retreats. It simply stands grounded. That energy, that stillness, that peace, that is the new language they do not understand. And it can be unsettling for them, not because you left, but because this time you did not leave a door ajar. You did not leave a path of crumbs to follow. You simply changed the direction of your own journey. No more waiting, no more checking who is watching your story, no more holding your breath for a sense of resolution that was never offered. You are no longer playing a game of seeking. You are cultivating something real. And that is the part they can no longer influence. At times, the most centered action is not to vanish, but to remain, silently, steadily, without offering them a way in. You do not leave, you do not block, you do not run, but you also do not respond with the old energy. You do not explain, and you do not invite them back into your inner world. And that, precisely that, is what quiets the game. Those who engage in emotional dynamics rely on your reactions. They are nourished by your patterns, the replies, the justifications, the need to be understood. When you withdraw, they wait. When you return, they resume. But when you remain without participating, that is when their whole structure of expectation begins to shift. Imagine someone wanting to play a game of chess with you, but you simply sit, observing your pieces with calm. You are still there at the table, but you are unmoved. No reaction, no counter move, no drama, just presence. That kind of stillness, it can be deeply unsettling to those who depend on control. Because when you stay emotionally centered, when you do not pursue or provoke, the control they thought they had begins to dissolve, and they have no reference for how to proceed. Your tranquility becomes the most powerful message you could ever convey. It says, I see you, but you no longer have the power to move me. That shift is subtle but deeply transformative. You are still visible, still in their world, but the pathway to your inner self is no longer open. You did not disappear. You simply stopped leaking your life force in their direction, and that quiet redirection of emotional energy begins to starve their illusion of influence. They expect an emotional retreat to be dramatic. They prepare for blocked numbers, hurt messages, long expressions of pain, but they never expect serenity. They never expect you to remain present and whole. That is the piece of the puzzle they cannot understand. You may still be connected on some level. You might even see each other, but your energy no longer bends or breaks for them. You speak when it is required, you act with dignity, and when met with provocation, you offer stillness, not resistance. This is not coldness, it is clarity. It is emotional integrity. That clarity is your sanctuary, and to someone who was accustomed to influencing you, it is confounding, because it shows their old ways no longer find purchase. Their words do not land with the same weight. Their gestures no longer pull you back. They offer bait, and you simply observe it float by. It is like throwing stones into a deep, calm lake and expecting great waves, but watching as nothing ripples on the surface. That silence, that calm, that graceful refusal to be disturbed. It is a language they do not speak, and that is what begins to unravel their sense of power. This is where they begin to question everything. Why are they not reacting? Why did they not reply? Why do they seem at peace? These questions can circle in their mind because they are not witnessing pain or effort. They are witnessing tranquility, and they cannot touch it. And what challenges them most is not your absence, but your neutrality. It is the fact that you did not vanish, you just detached from the outcome. In doing so, you have gently turned the game board over. You are present but unavailable, here but out of reach. Think of it as changing a lock without making an announcement. They may still possess the old key, but it no longer opens the door. And that realization creates a sense of unease, because they now understand that access to you was never a certainty. It was a gift. And they lost it quietly. They begin to test the waters: a gesture, a message, a random comment, a question disguised as casual conversation. But you do not engage. You do not punish either. You simply exist without leaning in their direction. And that self-possession, that quiet strength, that is what loosens their grip. You have stopped feeding the cycle. You have exited the arena without a final bow. And now they are left calling into a space, trying to provoke a response from someone who no longer lives for their attention. You have walked away emotionally without ever leaving the room. That is the difference between absence and presence without access. Absence is something they can process, but presence without permission, that is much harder, because they see you thriving, breathing, living, but not for them. That reality can burn. And while they are spinning, trying to decipher your calm, you have already entered a new chapter, one where you do not need their validation, one where your stillness speaks more powerfully than any reaction ever could, and they hear it with perfect clarity. At first, they watch you from a distance, feeling confident. You are silent, you are calm. They may tell themselves your stillness is a temporary state, just a passing storm. But then time moves forward without bringing your return, and your energy does not shift back toward them. That is when their curiosity begins to transform into something else, a quiet unease. They start to check your posts, your stories, your subtle expressions, hoping for a sign, a song lyric, a shared quote, a photo with a hidden layer of meaning. Anything that suggests you still feel, that you still look back, that you are still healing from a wound. But they find nothing. No cryptic messages, no bitter undertones, no emotional crumbs for them to hold on to. Just a sense of freedom, a kind of peace they were not prepared to witness. Your digital stillness is not meant to provoke them, but to protect you. You are not performing your pain. You are simply living in accordance with your own truth. And that shakes them more than any argument ever could, because they can no longer find a map to your emotions. There are no clues, no codes, no partial messages to analyze. And the more they search for a sign, the more they realize they have lost access, not just to your life, but to your inner world. You see, people are not unsettled when you are angry. They become unsettled when they can no longer read you, when your path becomes unpredictable, when your energy feels serene and untouchable. Those who rely on emotional influence thrive on knowing your next move. But now, you are moving in a way they cannot track. They scroll and scroll, searching for you between the lines, hoping your silence is still about them, but nothing connects back. Your life no longer orbits their absence. Your calm does not depend on their presence. That disconnect begins to echo in their mind. It might start as a simple thought. Perhaps they are just hiding it well. But it does not end there. As days pass with no signs, no slips, no passive-aggressive content, no reactive behavior. That is when the thought becomes a quiet question. What if they have truly found peace? That question grows. It works its way into their self-perception. What if I am no longer central to their story? And once that inquiry lands, it can spread with surprising speed. Because up until this point, they had always assumed your silence was charged with emotion, not imbued with peace. Now they are no longer certain, and it is not just what you are not saying, it is what you are doing instead. Living, sharing with lightness, smiling in photographs, reflecting beauty without a hint of sorrow. You do not appear like someone trying to be well. You appear like someone who simply is. That contrast is deeply felt. They expected to see a struggle, a visible space in your life where they used to be. But you are not limping, you are walking steadily. And it is not a performance, it is not a tactic. It is simply what happens when peace finally takes the place of longing. The silence that once felt passive now feels like authentic distance. Not the kind that waits to be bridged, but the kind that cannot be crossed. And that is the kind of distance that dissolves the illusion of their own importance. Slowly, quietly, and completely. Now, they begin to wonder if the influence they once felt was merely a reflection, if the control they thought they had was imagined, if perhaps, just perhaps, they were not the cause of your silence, but the catalyst for your healing. And that thought can cut deeper than any conflict. Because it does not just say you are gone, it says you have grown beyond them. It whispers that their part in your story may have concluded, not with a loud sound, but with stillness, not with a slammed door, but with a step onto a new path. And when someone who once felt central to your world realizes they may not even be a footnote in your next chapter, it bruises a part of them. They rarely show their sense of self, their identity, their belief that they were indispensable, because they believed your silence was about pain. But now they are beginning to see your silence was about your own release. And that revelation can change something inside of them, because they are not just witnessing your absence, they are witnessing your liberation. The sorrow used to reside within you. It was with you during the long nights. It walked alongside you as you revisited old memories. It was a whisper in your ear each time hope was met with silence. But that sorrow slowly and gently found a new place to rest, because now they are the ones left pacing, wondering, scanning every digital step you take, looking for any sign of vulnerability, of attachment, of a story that is not yet finished. But what they see is emptiness, not in you, but in the space they once filled. You did not explode. You did not plead. You did not block and scream or send a final declaration. You did not try to demonstrate your value one last time. You simply became still. Still in your explaining, still in your reaching, still in giving access to someone who did not know how to hold it. And that silence, so clean and untroubled, now echoes within them. At first, they thought it was just another of your moods, a pause, a quiet form of protest. But time continued its flow, and your silence did not soften. It did not fade, it remained. That is when they realized this was not a phase. This was a fundamental shift, one they did not see coming. Because for the first time, your stillness did not carry anticipation. It carried a quiet finality. And nothing is more unsettling to someone accustomed to being given another chance. Now the roles have gently reversed. You are not the one awaiting resolution, they are. You are not the one clinging to the past, they are. You are not the one experiencing confusion, they are. And the silence, the very same stillness they may have used as a tool, is now what causes them to reflect. Because silence is easy to dismiss when it is filled with expectation. But when silence becomes neutral, emotionally calm, almost peaceful, it becomes a mirror. They cannot shout at it. They cannot argue with it. They cannot fix it. They are simply left with their own echo. They start to recall moments they once brushed aside, words they said without thinking, times you reached out and they pulled away. And those memories, once weightless to them, now return with substance, because they now understand that may have been the last time you tried. They are not haunted by what you said. They are haunted by everything you did not. The conversations you stopped starting, the energy you stopped extending, the doors you gently closed without a sound, the peace that replaced your inner storm. And while they sit in stillness, perhaps hoping you might reach out once more, a part of them knows this is different. You are not holding back to make a point. You have simply disconnected your energy. And that realization begins to be felt in places they didn't know could feel. The disquiet settles in quietly. It is not loud or overt. It appears in the way they visit your profile and find nothing aimed at them, in the way their messages might go unread, in how your name vanishes from their notifications and does not come back. That is when their own ease can begin. Not because you have gone, but because you did not try to return. You did not ask for their understanding. You did not make one last emotional appeal. And that absence of noise, that is what carries the most weight. They start to reach out, perhaps not directly, but through subtle gestures, a small sign, a shared memory, a brief message after weeks of quiet. But your response is no longer guaranteed. Your stillness now has its own integrity, and your peace has become a sacred ground. They are finally feeling the weight that you once carried. Not because you wished it upon them, but because healing has its own natural consequences. One of them is clarity, and clarity creates a space they no longer know how to enter. That is where their true reflection begins. And the most profound part for them, it is not the silence itself. It is the awareness that this time, you are not watching your screen. You are not checking to see if they noticed. You are not counting the hours since their last message. You have stopped waiting entirely. That is what transforms everything. Not your absence, your inner alignment. Not your distance, your peace. Because now the weight of what was lost rests with them. Quiet, heavy, undeniable. And nothing they do seems to invite you back. There is a moment when your stillness becomes more than mere distance. It becomes a mirror, and the person who once dismissed you is now invited to look at their own actions, not through your words, not through confrontation, but through who you have become now that their influence has waned. You no longer plead, you no longer justify, you no longer show signs of an inner life that is tethered to them. And everything they attempt to do now lands in a space that no longer has a reaction. The emotional pathways they used to navigate are no longer connected to you. The game has concluded, but they did not receive the notice. They send a message hoping to find tension. They share something designed to provoke a feeling. They create scenarios that used to draw you in, but what they find now is silence, stillness, and a gentle indifference. Not forced, not performed, but authentic. And that emptiness where reaction used to live. That is what can drive them to introspection. Because what they are witnessing is not anger, it is absence. Not of your being, but of your participation. You are not trying to affect them. You have simply stepped out of that particular arena. You are no longer performing the role they had assigned to you. You were once the one who overanalyzed, who watched for every sign, who searched between every line. But now, the only thing you are watching is the growth of your own inner peace. You are not ignoring them to create an effect. You have simply stopped looking in their direction for your own well-being. That is what can disorient them. Because they believed they had time. They believed you would always remain emotionally open to them. They thought they could leave the door open and you would keep waiting in the hall. But now the hallway is empty and the door leads to a room that has been reclaimed. They start to see this new version of you and it unsettles them. Not because you are bitter, but because you are clear. You have become a reflection of what they were unable to hold. And seeing you this way, strong, calm, self-contained, invites them to see their own role in your transformation. You carry no resentment, you offer no blame, but your stillness communicates what they may not want to hear. I am not who I once was, and I am not returning to that self. And for someone who once enjoyed being the center of your universe, that truth can be deeply humbling. Now, when they try to re-engage, they find nothing familiar. The doors do not open in the same way. The energy is different. The warmth is gone, not replaced by coldness, but simply no longer offered to them. What they once knew is no longer present, and the version of you that remains does not bend. They may try to play the old game, subtle hints, guilt-laden messages, memories used as bait, but the rules have shifted, and more importantly, one of the players has left the field. There is no audience, no applause, no performance, just quiet stillness. That is what they cannot grasp, because the stage once belonged to them. They used to direct the play, but now the stage is empty. The lights are off, and you are no longer in the front row, waiting for their next line. You have left the theater entirely, and in doing so, you have reclaimed your own story. It is a unique kind of pain, the one that comes not from being left, but from the realization that you are no longer essential to someone else's emotional landscape. That is what they may now feel, the quiet collapse of an assumed power dynamic, one that no longer exists. And the most poignant part of it all, it is not what you have said, it is what you have not. No dramatic conclusion, no final, fiery scene, just the gentle finality of a chapter that closed on its own, a decision that did not require permission, a peace that does not seek their approval. You do not return to make a point. You do not come back to show them what they are missing, because true growth does not perform for an audience. It simply walks on. And when they look at you now, they do not see someone trying to win. They see someone who already won by no longer needing to play. Every attempt they now make to pull you back in feels like an echo in an empty room. A reaction they once expected with certainty now meets with nothing. Just space, just silence, just the immovable presence of someone who no longer sways with their rhythm. That is what changes everything for them. You have become calm, but not passive, present, but not available. Your stillness is no longer a place of waiting. It is a boundary made of peace. Your silence does not cry for attention. It radiates a quiet strength. And peace, to someone accustomed to creating turbulence, can feel profoundly unfamiliar. They might send a message, even a simple one. They may like an old photograph, hoping to trigger a memory. They try to provoke a reaction with ambiguous words or nostalgic games. But nothing lands, because the version of you that once pursued that connection is no longer there. Your energy is now a closed gate. They can still see the garden, but they can no longer walk through it. And that hurts in ways they may never voice, because they realize with each unanswered attempt that they lost access to the most vital part of you. Not your presence, but your open heart. You did not become cold, you became centered. And with that centering came strength, the strength to observe without reacting, to exist without seeking, to remain without clinging. And that level of presence, it is the outcome they never anticipated. Now they wander through the same spaces where your energy once flowed freely toward them and find only tranquility. Not because you have disappeared, but because you have detached. You are here, but not for them. And that is a deeper form of release than words could ever convey. They used to know the way to your heart, what to say, and when to say it. But now, every attempt is a step into the unknown. Every move they make is met with your stillness. You have become the gentle consequence of every moment. They assumed you would never walk away, and it was not anger that led you to leave, it was clarity. The kind of clarity that requires no explanation or retribution. Just space, just silence, just a life that no longer has them at its core. And now they sit before your calm, like someone locked out of a home they never imagined could be close to them. A door that once opened with every knock. But this time, the handle does not turn. The welcome mat is no longer there, and neither are you. Not in body, but in availability. You are no longer hiding, you are shining. But your light no longer warms them. It simply exists, without needing invitation or explanation. And that untouchable presence, that is the reflection they now must carry. Because nothing can unsettle someone's ego, like realizing they no longer know how to gain your attention. And nothing perplexes them more than seeing you at peace, without needing anything from them, not even a final word. They once felt like your center of gravity, but now your orbit has changed. Your focus has broadened. Your silence is no longer a tactic, it is a state of being, one they cannot break, cannot reach, and cannot disturb. And in that untouchable stillness, they finally feel the echo of what they once dismissed in you. Because the truth is humbling. Those who did not know how to care for your peace, now do not even know how to approach it. So now the question is not whether they will return. It is whether you will still be receptive if they do, and whether they will even recognize the person you have become. because the silence they once overlooked has transformed you. You no longer explain, you no longer perform, and you certainly do not pursue anyone who could not see your value the first time. But here is the part that matters most. Will you continue this growth, or will you allow their return to pull you back into the same cycle? Because they may return, maybe not with words, but with a gesture, a glance, a quiet, "Hello, how have you been?" But it is not about their actions, it is about your response. Are you now grounded enough to remain calm and to remain on your own path? If you felt that shift within you, if this message stirred something in your heart, then do not let that feeling dissipate. Let it be your anchor. Use this stillness not to wait, but to rebuild. And before you continue your journey, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notifications. Each week, you will find guiding insights to transform heartbreak into inner strength and silence into your most profound sanctuary.